interesting because I wonder now how much of what you guys do is going to be virtual.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm consuming you guys virtually,
Mm-hmm.
but think about it. Like now, I can go to church with my family even though I live in Knoxville.
Yeah. Hey, get this. This will blow your mind. There's a church in Tulsa. Have you seen the VR? My kids have one. What's the PlayStation or Facebook owns it? Yeah, that's the new. It's all the kids. You actually wear it. What's it called? It's got a name. What internet project? There's a church in Tulsa that is creating the software right now to do virtual church. Like you literally put this on. All Facebook people that have this, they'll like go to church. You can like, do you want the front? You want the middle, the back, and then like you're sitting in church. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
I mean, dumping some money into it. It's a big time church, and he's a previous NFL player, so I think he's got a pretty big budget. But it's wild to think about how they're thinking through what's potential.
Well, and also I think it's and I mean, gosh, I wish we were recording.
Let's do this as a.
But like
Check.
I'm fascinated by communities online and how you can actually create that, and a big part of going to church is for the community.
That's probably one of the most important parts.
You know what I mean? Because you can get, you can listen to podcasts, all these things, but really that community part is a big part. And I just wonder if now churches are going to put a lot of emphasis on the online community sector,
I do think it's important. So what's crazy with the church world is you can now listen to your favorite pastor anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So let's say you love Stephen Furtick, which so many people love Stephen Furtick, which is great. He's an incredible communicator. You don't need to go to a local church for that, which is interesting. But what I think the differentiation is where are you going to find community? So I can listen to any podcast, I can pull up any pastor. 20 years ago, I can listen to a sermon just because I like it. But I think the difference is the local church is meant to be the kind of context of community. So you're right. From my heart, I think locally we want to develop community, but how do we do that online then? Not just giving information,
right? Not
just giving, hey, there's a 1 point, take this for the week and bless you, brother.
Yeah.
How do we actually cultivate real community, which is what we're created for?
Yep.
And how do you do that in a meaningful way, not just a token surface?
And honestly, that's so funny you said that, because it was a big part of what I wanted to talk with you about is like this idea of togetherness, and because that's been taken away from us.
Oh my goodness.
And there's so much loneliness going on.
So much.
And now I want to say that with all the advances that have happened in technology, how can we use that to double down on what was really working before, in the community aspect? But what have you seen as far as loneliness goes?
Yeah, so I think the biggest. Are we good here?
Are we recording?
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think it was.
Your last name's pronounced like James Harden?
James Harden, my brother, man. You got a beard, not similar.
About 50
I was in Houston. I got to see him play a couple times in the playoffs, and dude's awesome. But yeah, we told our kids early on that he's your long lost uncle. That will never give you any money.
Yeah, you won't receive anything.
Nothing. Don't plan on it. Yeah. But James Harden, yes, there you go. Yes, don't call me that.
That really threw me off.
I know. Oh.
Okay, I'm ready. Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited for this. This is one of the first episodes of Outside the Box, and this is an outside the box conversation. And I'm pumped about having this outside the box conversation with my good friend Derek Harden, lead pastor at Christ Fellowship, and big part of my family's life. And I've been watching you from Knoxville all pandemic, so I'm super thankful for that. But man, it's so good to have you in here.
Man, thank you. I'm honored. I love the topic or the title, Outside the Box. That's really, I think, what I've lived to do, and I found a lot of that. And so I love Knoxville. Listening in to Christ Fellowship's incredible technology nowadays. Right? The fact that your family's here in Kingsport, sometimes they're tuning in online, sometimes in person, but that they can join you online at the same time.
Yep.
It's an amazing. That literally is outside the box for anybody 10 years ago. That could have been happening.
I think we're living in this outside the box moment where outside the box is becoming normal, and we're looking for those opportunities. Yeah. And before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about community and how can we foster community in this new world that we live in, given there's restrictions now, hopefully they'll be lifted at some point soon. But also, how can we double down on some of the virtual stuff? Because I like the idea of being able to talk about your sermons with my parents, on Sunday evenings.
So
and I haven't, and I honestly haven't been able to do that. not because it wasn't available, but because I wasn't thinking that way.
Sure.
Now it's like it's my first thought. So what's your thought on community now?
Yeah, that's interesting. So we had a guy at the church, I don't know when he said, but he said something interesting that really made our leaders think. He said, hey, I want you to think about that you are now a virtual church with a local presence. That is outside the box.
Yes.
No longer is it you're just a local church with a virtual presence. He said, I think we need to start thinking the other way. And so for us as a leadership team, we've had to start thinking differently.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking is, you can pull a podcast up from your favorite TED Talk, favorite sermon, fill in the blank what you want to listen to. And nowadays you can listen to anything, even the last 20 years. I mean, I love a guy named John Wimber. I can literally go back and watch his 1980s conference on YouTube. It's amazing, right? Technology's so good. So I think what differentiates that is the community aspect. And so locally, obviously we believe the church gathering is important. There's so much happens more than just getting information, but learning to live in the context of community, seeing wholeness and togetherness. But we're trying to figure it out now, try to innovate. What's that look like online for a young man that's in Knoxville? We've got people that tune in from California and Dallas and Pennsylvania and Florida and even around the world. We have a few people that tune in. And so we're trying to figure that out. And so for me, I don't want just to go through the motions or just to check off the box. We want to bring authentic, real content that invites people. And so one of the ways that we're doing that is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9 a.m. we have a Facebook Live prayer. So some of what we're doing here, but it's highly interactive.
Yes.
And I start that every week. My wife and I lead it on Thursday at 9 a.m. And the intent is they're not just listening to me pray, but we're actually inviting people, whether it's through comments or whatnot, to say, hey, this is what I have a prayer need for.
Yep.
And then we're saying, hey, as you look through the comments, actually, I want you sitting at home, you pray for the person in Arkansas that just wrote that comment.
So
you
cool.
pray for this person in that comment. And then, hey, and actually give them a comment letting them know. And so we're trying to crack the nut, man. I can't say we got it figured out. For sure we don't have it figured out, but we're trying to take new steps. And really we're trying to innovate, which is, I think, like you said, living outside the box requires innovation. And I do think the potential is here for us to do some innovation, but here's the thing. I think there's going to be a lot of people that want to stay in the box.
Yep.
And they're not willing to grow. They're not willing to change. And what's going to happen, there's going to be a lot of businesses, a lot of churches that were once great, that after the next 10 years, as things keep moving, they're going to look back and say, we once were great, but we weren't willing to change.
Well, what do you think that is? What do you think keeps someone in the box?
Yeah, so one of my favorite topics, Dr. Rogers knows, is fear.
Okay, yeah.
Fear. So two greatest fears, right? I think that most humans, I think we would all agree with, we're scared of being alone.
Yep.
And we're scared that we're not enough.
Okay.
And honestly, so as a pastor, a guy who studies the word, what was that initial separation from the Lord? In the garden, Eve felt like in that moment she wasn't enough. The lie was, if you do this, then you'll be like God. And so in that moment, what was the tease? You're not enough. You need to believe it, and you need to take it in your own hands because you're going to be all alone.
That's a lot.
I don't know about you, but that's the same thing I hear. This little voice, so whether you're a believer or not, we all hear that voice. You're not enough.
Yeah.
You got to do something different. You're not enough, and so you got to be this. You're not enough, so you got to give love this way. You're not enough, so you got to act this way. And so if that's the case, if we're operating out of fear, which most of the decisions we make is out of fear, if we think that we're going to fail, if failure is my first thought, if I try this, I'm going to fail, most of the time we're not going to do it. And so guess what we do? We stay in the box, whatever that proverbial box is, whether it's career, whether it's, horrible relationship, whether it's, not trying a new college or, some kind of degree. We go back and resort to what we know, and we play it safe. And so I think that's what keeps most people from stepping out.
And it's super interesting you said that because, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show is because I know a little bit of your story.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't look like a lead pastor to me. You look a little more.
I appreciate that. I'll take that one. I don't know what that means. Don't even have to unpack. I'll just take that as a good thing.
But you have an athletic background.
Yes.
And I know you didn't start off as a pastor. Kind of walk us through that, because I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And that's probably why it's so natural for you to think outside the box as a pastor. Yeah. I think a lot of that's because of your journey to becoming one.
Sure.
So walk us through that, because I know you're a football guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Walk us through.
Yeah. So love football in general. Played football at the Ohio State University,
And if you've ever watched one of his sermons, he never mentions that.
I never mentioned. So you're lucky that you heard today. But I would say actually my career path, so I started out as a mechanical engineer. I got a degree. I would say I actually made the decision to do that because of fear. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say my fear was I wanted to have a career that was looked like people thought a lot of, that led me to where I could get an MBA, and then the MBA would allow me to be a CEO of a big company, and I could make a lot of money, and I could have a lot of power. All that was fear-driven.
All fear-driven.
All of it, every bit of it. And so I went from there and had a lot of fear, a lot of success, because we can be really successful in fear, but we're actually always limiting ourselves whenever we're operating with fear. But a lot of people have been successful in football and careers because they have a chip on their shoulder. And sometimes we celebrate that, but I actually think if we could navigate through that fear, the ceiling would actually be higher for most people, for everybody actually. So I went from that to engineering, into management, in a manufacturing set, and then I moved into healthcare. Actually, I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
So I spent a year as an executive director of an Alzheimer's unit.
No way.
Literally rolled in there, never been in a residential assisted living before, and they gave me to be the boss. And it was a terrible setup because the company had been hemorrhaging money. They only had like a quarter of the beds filled. And they said, we just need something to change here.
Yeah.
So they knew that's kind of my specialty, is bring change.
So you came in to rock the boat.
Yes. To bring the boat back to, but rock the boat in order to get steady. And then from there I went through, and you probably don't know this either, I went through the whole Chick-fil-A operator process.
No.
Yeah. So I went from
what valuable experience.
Incredible 25-page application to start with, a year process all the way to Atlanta, was actually beginning to interview for stores in the Southeast. And here's the funny part, it's actually, this ties all together, is I felt like it wasn't actually who God made me to be. Not because it's not a great job, and it's great for some people, but this is the vision I had. It was going to put me in a sandbox. It's a great sandbox, very lucrative sandbox to be in. Yeah, lots of opportunities. But the way that God designed me is I hate to be constrained. I hate to say, okay, this is your little sandbox. As long as you play in this, we're going to pay you well, and you're going to do things. Some guys, that's incredible. Men and women crush that, and they love it. But for me, I recognized at that point of my maturing process as an adult that would actually be a death. No matter how much money I had, if I was said, hey, you got to play in our sandbox and play by our rules all the time, I would actually shrivel up and die. Very wealthy, but I would have been dead.
How did you recognize that about yourself? Like, how do you become so self-aware? Because
Lord,
because that's
my
a
wife,
huge.
Can you say it out to my wife that I'm self-aware? Because I'm growing in that area. She would laugh if she heard this. Hopefully she's watching, babe. I love you. But yeah, so I would say I'm not the most self-aware. I feel like on my journey though, I've become more self-aware.
Okay.
As the Lord has worked in my life, as I've been open, and I think the biggest thing is being honest.
Okay.
Telling the truth sets us free in every way. It sets us free from fear, guilt, shame, sets us on the path of transformation. And so for me, getting to a point in my life where I could just be honest, I didn't have to try to impress somebody or do something for somebody else. And so that's been a process, a long one, because I didn't want to be a pastor. Still days I don't want to be a pastor, honestly. I think everybody has that. But I do believe that I'm called to be that for this season, whether that's a 3-year season or a 30-year season. You know, I'm trying to be faithful for what he's been giving me. And so I went from all that to say I went all that, and then had the opportunity to become a teaching pastor in Houston, wrestled with that for a while. So left the Alzheimer's unit I was in, became a teaching pastor, was loving that, and then came across this opportunity in some town I'd never heard of before, Kingsport, Tennessee. And I've been here for 4 years. This week's been 4 years.
That's unbelievable. Yes. I remember that moment, like it was yesterday. Golly, it's
so fast.
Time has flown.
Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah, but I feel like, your story is so synonymous with what so many people are going through right now, just in these little pivots, little changes, but being open while making them. Like, how did you keep moving forward? How did you not let fear take over, and pull back?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I could answer that, I'd be very wealthy. If I could get other people to jump on that, that's what I endeavor to do actually, is to help people get through fear. Last time I was on with Dr. Rogers, we talked about the most quoted command in the Bible is do not fear. And if I believe that the Bible gives us a real mirror to humanity and gives us insight into who God is and who he made us to be. But for me, I think I personally had to be all right with failing. And I know we talk about that, fail forward, but
but it is true. Like if we're not willing to fail, if we don't recognize that part of our human existence is failure, then we'll never have any innovation. We'll never try a new career. We'll never do anything other than what's always been done. Mm-hmm. And so for me, whether it was football, trying out after one time failing and being willing to set myself up for another potential failure, but working through that and making the team, to whether it's changing careers and having whiplash, my wife and I are still trying to figure out what's happening. You will never do that if your only goal is to not fail.
I feel like not failing is such a big source of fear for so many people, and I think if you're afraid to fail, you're not going to do anything. Never. Whether that's within with your own health or with your career, and with what's happening right now. And one thing I want to talk to you about in a second is loneliness, and because I know I've struggled with it. I know that so many people watching probably have, but a lot of, it's easy to stay in that, because to get out of it, you have to try something new. Yeah. You might have to put yourself out there.
Guaranteed.
Might fail.
Yeah.
And that it all kind of ties in with the community thing. And it's risky to be a part of a community or start one or, to kind of invest in one, So I'm going all over the place, but what's your thoughts on some of this loneliness stuff? What do we do?
I think you got to get to the core, which is I think we got to ask a lot of questions. So I think for me, I would say, what if I'm lonely today? If somebody's sitting here watching and you feel like I'm lonely, when's the first time I felt lonely? Okay, well, what decisions did I make out of that feeling that got me to where I'm today? Then we can really start doing some inner work to say, okay, why am I lonely? And so most of the time I think it's insecurity, which insecurity is very close to the core. And I think the core is fear. I know I keep getting back to it, but I think it's the core of almost everything we do, where we find ourselves in. It's the core, honestly, I think, of a lot of illness, the mental and body connection. I think science is finding more and more of that out. But with loneliness, I think there is a fear. I'm not good enough. People think that. If I'm around somebody, they're not going to like me. If I say this thing, they're going to judge me and they're going to think. So it's just safer for me to isolate myself, for me to pull myself away from community. And then when you get in that place, you start hearing voices. And that's the beauty of communities. It checks us from the lies of the enemy, the lies of the world. And so when I'm isolated, though, I don't have anybody to counter what I'm hearing here or what's out here, this other voice that may not be, that's probably not leading me where I should be going. And so I think it is fear-based, man, and we're scared. And so it's a big step. Yeah. Saying hello to somebody for some people is a huge step, but an essential one.
Yeah, I think it's such a big deal. And I know that, a lot of people are dealing with depression right now. And I'm trying to think about, what is some of the outside the box things that we can do to combat that. And a lot of it comes down for me is taking control, like doing something, action.
Doing something.
And I think in order to do something, you have to first maybe get rid of that fear of failing, and make the doing something the thing versus the result of what you're trying to do. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about with your journey is you kept doing things, even, I mean, do you ever feel a little bit like an imposter when you first start something new?
Always. Yeah. You're like, man, what am I doing here?
Yeah. Sure. Like, do I deserve
I don't
this?
belong here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Yeah, and I think we all kind of go through it at different moments, whether it's you're a new parent, your new husband, got a new job, or switch careers. And in your case, in my case, certainly, it's something that we all go through. And I think that's also helpful to know that we all go through it.
It's the human condition.
Yeah.
The human condition. I will say one thing that we say this a lot to people is it's really hard to turn something that's not moving. And so even if I'm moving at a snail's pace, there's potential to steer and to turn. But if I'm set in my ways, I'm not willing to move forward, even honestly move backward. Any movement at all, I think, is better than just staying still. If I'm not willing to move, I can't be turned. And so I love what you said, man. What's one little thing? Maybe today you just get out and take a walk.
Yeah.
Which, maybe that's a huge step for you. Maybe today you send a text to a family member. I don't know. But what if that one little step you can take to start building some momentum and start moving the ship forward again?
Yeah. And you can, socially, that's a big deal too. If it's like you said, sending a text message, it's, setting up a night where you get together with a buddy of yours, making sure that happens. Mm-hmm. And I'm also kind of hearing making a priority out of this stuff, making a priority out of this type of growth thing, which I think can help a lot of people. Yeah. It's just, it's a fascinating time, and one that I think that, we can learn a lot from.
Yeah.
We can
if we're willing to. Yes.
We either can take steps backward, just like the church. We can take steps backward with the whole virtual thing, or we can, embrace it and try to figure out, okay, how can we build community, outside of the brick and mortar church.
It's so good, man.
It's just interesting. But man, this has been like, I'm really excited to have you on the show because you're like an embodiment of outside the box.
That's good. I hope I continue that. That's awesome, man. Yeah.
But I do appreciate it. Is there any one thing?
Yeah.
I wanted to. We got a question the other day about a kid, and I think you were prefaced this before.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids who are dealing with things that we didn't have to deal with.
So much. Yeah.
And I'm sure you're seeing it with your own kids, like. Wearing a mask and being away from your friends, having to do things through a computer.
Virtual schooling, so hard. Yeah.
Have you seen depression in kids? Like, has that been something?
So I've talked to a lot of parents. So my kids, I don't think are so much depressed. Kate and I have been really purposed to not try to bring any anxieties and let them just feel it. So we've done a lot of the normal things as a family that we've tried to do. But yeah, so many friends. And honestly though, even our kids that are super great students, we're very hands-on. They're not doing as well in school, which is hard, right? And so I can imagine a kid who has not parents that are right there in the midst, that maybe are just checked out or too busy with work, that don't have that. I don't know how that happens. But yeah, many kids, I think even in our youth group, they're starting to see some of that of trying to navigate this odd season where, kids, especially middle school, high school age, they thrive on community. They thrive on recognizing they're not alone in this fear, this new whatever hormone that's going on at that time. Like, it's not just them, right? And so I do think it's a dangerous place if we're not really purposed to address it. And we are seeing more of that. And I think you guys would be able to speak into that on a macro level of what the potential long-term effects are going to be for kids and the need to address some of these things sooner than later.
How do we get them interacting in a way that people feel comfortable with?
Whew, that's a loaded question. So I mean, so at some point we're gonna have to take some steps that some people aren't gonna be happy with. It's some people there's always gonna be something we're gonna do that somebody disagrees with. But I do think that there's room, and we're seeing data. College data, university studies that are showing the need, the importance, but also the safety in it. And so I do think there are going to be some steps we're going to take to get kids back into this community. We're trying to do that as a church. We're trying to even lead, even our community-wise. Not everybody's happy with every decision I've made in leading the church, and that's just part of it. But we want to start getting people back together physically when it's possible. We are wired for that.
We're wired for it.
And kids specifically, that don't have the full frontal lobe and everything developed, they can't process with as much maturity as adults can. And so for them to have community, it's at the top of my list.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we're, towards the latter part of this, and that, but especially for the kids, because I can't imagine having school being taken away and things of that nature. So we're hopeful, and we're gonna think about the kids right now. But man, this has been a blast.
Yeah, man, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's
really
do it again
appreciate you being
man.
on here.
I would enjoy it,
guys. Thank you so much. This has been Outside the Box Conversations. I'm with Derek Harden. I'm your host, Ben Rogers, and as always, we'll see you next time.